The previous tutorials covered the various methods you can use to publish to players. In this tutorial, you'll learn about device setup advanced settings. These advanced settings can be applied to any player setup. First, open BrightAuthor Connected and begin to set up a player using the process described in the previous setup tutorials. Under Network Properties, the first field you'll see is the time server. If you leave this as is, your player will use the BrightSign time server to set the time. If your player has a Wi-Fi module installed, you can enable wireless and enter a network ID and password. Enabling the local diagnostic web server lets you check on the status of a device and control several player settings over a local network using a web browser. If you set up your player on bsn.cloud, you can access these features in the Network tab using a new feature called the Remote Diagnostic Web Server, or the Remote DWS for short. Even the free subscription of bsn.cloud lets you use the Remote DWS to check on the status of a device and control a variety of player settings from anywhere, regardless of how you set up your player. Therefore, if you connected your player to a bsn.cloud account, you can leave the local DWS option unchecked in most cases. Enabling the local DWS activates a similar set of controls as the remote DWS, but access is limited to your local area and network, instead of being able to access the remote DWS from anywhere using the bsn.cloud servers. If you keep the local diagnostic web server checked, it's a good practice to add a password for added security. By default, the username of the local diagnostic web server will be admin. Checking Enable Local Web Server is necessary for some interactive presentations because it allows your player to receive user variables. Players with this feature enabled can be set up to accept commands from external devices like a web browser or a smartphone application. Check out the tutorial on the BrightSign mobile app for details. For added security, it's a good idea to add a username and password here as well. Enabling update notifications is an optional feature that automatically refreshes the user variable web page whenever values change on the player. Enabling logging can help you keep track of your player's performance throughout the day. Only enable logging if needed. Each box enables the various categories of logging. For example, you may want to know how many times a button was pressed in a day. You can accomplish this by enabling event logging. This feature allows you to update the BrightSign OS of your player when you apply a new device setup. Select your player model and specify the BrightSign OS release that you would like to apply. Most users will want to select Standard as the update type. Enabling Remote Snapshot records images of the player's output at specified intervals. You can also specify the number of images to save. The player will automatically delete the oldest images once it reaches its maximum. You can also adjust the JPEG quality and orientation. Selecting the Network Options button opens up the Advanced Network Options window. Under the Player tab, you can specify a hostname and use a proxy server. Checking Limit Content Downloads and Limit Health Updates allows users to throttle traffic to players during a designated time frame. Some customers have used this feature to reduce network congestion during the day and ensure that large content downloads take place during off hours. Under the Wired tab, users can specify the data types that the player can accept. This is also where you can specify a static IP address. To do this, you will need to register your player on your network and enter its IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway information here. Scroll down in the Wired tab and you can limit the bandwidth of the content download and health check period that you enabled in the Player tab. You can set the bandwidth of the limit period, and you can also set the bandwidth of the time outside of the limit period. There are options to set the bandwidth to unlimited, default, or a specified size. The default is 2000 kilobits per second. To give this context, that's a quarter megabyte per second, which is about the size of a single high-definition JPEG per second. Here's an example of how this feature could be used. A business wants to make sure big files don't get pushed to players during business hours, so that the players can't create significant amounts of network traffic during the day. But they still want the player to periodically receive photos, text, and weather updates. The business will want to limit traffic during the window to default, 2000 kilobits per second, and set the bandwidth outside of the window to unlimited. The wireless tab looks identical to the wired tab, but applies to the wireless connection. Under the Diagnostic tab, checking Enable Network Diagnostic activates the other options in the tab and enables the player to display the Network Diagnostic screen on boot up. Checking the Test Ethernet, Test Wireless, and Test Internet boxes add those additional diagnostic tests, and then display their status when the player boots up. Thanks for watching this tutorial on advanced player setup.